Since we're done discussing about the different therapeutic process, let us now go on its application, which is the therapeutic techniques and procedures. So this Adlerian counseling is also structured with 4 central objectives that corresponds to the 4 phases of therapeutic process. So the first one is establish the therapeutic process. Second, explore the psychological dynamic in the client, or this is the assessment. Third, encourage the development of self-understanding or making the insight into purpose. And lastly, help the client to make new choices, or this is the reorientation or re-education. So these phases is not an easy process because it requires a lot of time, effort, and even patience so that it will be successful. So Drakers incorporated these phases into what he called the minor psychotherapy, which is in the context and service of holistic medicine. And this therapy has been elaborated. That's why now we have the Adlerian therapy, or what we call ABT. So let us now go to the first phase of this process. So the first phase is establish relationship. So in this phase, its aim is to have or build a solid positive therapeutic relationship between the counselor and the client. So to be able to have this kind of relationship, both the counselor and the client must have a collaboration with one another. So this relationship should also be based on a sense of interest that will help the client grow, be involved, and also to have a friendship with one another. So in this phase also, it focuses on the person-to-person contact rather than starting on the problem itself. So to be able to do this, the counselor must have an effective way or effective counseling process in which the counselor must be able to recognize the different personal issue of that client, and he or she must not only recognize this issue, but he or she must also deal with those issues. And after recognizing and dealing with those issues, the client must be willing to explore, and he or she must be willing to change. So this phase works through understanding the client's identity and experience of the world, and this is through attending and listening to them with empathy. Second, understanding the subjective experiences of your client. And third, identifying and clarifying the goals. And lastly, the suggestion of the initial hunches or assumption about the purpose and the client's symptoms, actions, and interactions. So basically, the establishment of the relationship between the counselor and the client must not only work during the first or the initial phase. In fact, this must also work to the remaining 3 phases or all throughout this therapy. And now let's go with the second phase, which is assessing the individual's psychological dynamics. So in this phase, it aims to have a deeper understanding of the individual's lifestyle. And this phase also focuses on understanding the client's identity and how this identity relates to the world at large. So in this phase, it also proceeds with the 2 interview forms. The first one is the subjective interview. So in this subjective interview, the counselor will help the client to tell his or her story or life story as completely as possible. So here, the counselor must be very open and very willing to listen to the client. Through the client's story, the counselor must also extract the patterns that his or her client has, and therefore, the counselor must also determine on what accounts or the various concerns that the client has in his or her life. So also through this, the counselor will be able to know a little background about his or her client. So the second interview is the objective interview, in which it seeks to discover or determine the different information about the client. So first, here is the how problems in the client's life began. And second, the different precipitating events or the cause of event. Third, any medical history that includes the previous history and the present medical history. Fourth, any social history regarding in the client's life. Fifth, the reasons the client chose the therapy at that time. And sixth, the person's coping with life tasks. And lastly, the lifestyle assessment. So the lifestyle assessment is very important because this assessment seeks to develop a holistic narrative about the client, and it also makes sense of the way on the person copes up with the different life tasks. And also this lifestyle assessment also uncovers the different private interpretations and logic that is involved in that person's way of coping. So this lifestyle assessment starts in the investigation about the family constellation and the early recollection of the person. So let us now first talk about family constellation. In family constellation, it basically says that all of us came from a family, and this family has the central impact in our lives. And also, through the family that we have, we form our own view of ourselves, our own view about others, and also about the world. And also, it also leads us to have our own view about life. So in family constellation, this also includes the client's evaluation of the different conditions that prevail in his or her family. This may include when your client is still young, or the client's birth order, or the relationship that he or she has with his or her parents. And also this includes the family values, the extended family, and the culture. So the purpose of knowing this family constellation is for your client to elicit his or her own view toward self, toward others, and also the development that he or she has. And this is for the counselor to also know what might affect that development. So now, in the early recollections, these are the one-time occurrences, experiences, or memories of your client that usually happen before the age of 10. So these things are also a specific one, or a specific memory, or a small mystery that happened in the life of your client. These early recollections are the story of life of your client that will help the counselor understand on why his or her client has that view in the present. So knowing the story of the client will help the counselor to know better about him or her. And so with that, after doing the subjective and objective interview, we will now have the integration or the summarization. So in integration and summarization, it shows here the summary data that the counselor got from his or her client. Most of the integration and summarization made are in a narrative form.
Now let's move on to the phase 3 of the Adlerian therapy. Encourage self-understanding and insight. The aim is to interpret the findings of the assessment as an avenue for self-understanding and insight. Self-understanding is only possible when hidden purposes and goals of behavior are made conscious. Disclosure and well-timed interpretations are techniques that facilitate the process of gaining insight. Now, insight, this refers to an understanding of the motivations that operate in a client's life. This is also a special form of awareness that facilitates a meaningful understanding within the therapeutic relationship and acts as a foundation for change. Now, interpretation deals with the client's underlying motives for behaving the way they do in the here and now. Disclosure and interpretation is concerned with creating awareness with one's direction in life, one's goals and purposes, one's private logic and how it works, and one's current behavior. Interpretation are also suggestions presented tentatively in the form of open-ended questions, also known as the Socratic method of questioning, that can be explored in the sessions. Interpretations can also be called hunches or guesses. Clients are not led to defend themselves, and they feel free to discuss and even argue with the counselor's hunches and impressions. So basically, the point of this phase is for the therapist to give other ways of thinking how the client is handling his or her situation. Just like the therapist is making the client see his or her situation in a different perspective. Both the counselor and the client eventually come to understand the client's motivations, the way in these motivations are not contributing to the maintenance of the problem, and what the client can do to correct the situation. The counselor helps the client understand the limitations of the life and the style of it the client has chosen. Now let's move on to the final phase of the Adlerian therapy, which is the reorientation and reeducation. This is an action-oriented phase. Why do we say that? It is because the aim of this is to put the insights that were gained in the other phases into practice. Now, the focus of this phase is help the client discover a new and more functional perspective. Clients can also choose to adopt a new style of life based on their insights that they gained earlier in the phases of the therapy. Also, clients figure out how to reorient their current style of living to the useful side of life. The useful side of life involves a sense of belongingness and being valued, having an interest in others and their welfare, courage, the acceptance of imperfection, confidence, a sense of humor, a willingness to contribute, and an outgoing friendliness. Now, this is the way to increase their community feeling and social interest. While on the other hand, the useless side of life is characterized by self-absorption, withdrawal from life tasks, self-protection, or acts against one's fellow human beings. People acting on useless side of life become less functional and are more susceptible to psychopathology. Adlerian therapy stands in opposition to self-depreciation, isolation, and retreat, and it seeks to help clients gain courage and to connect to strengths within themselves, to others, and to life. Now, reorientation, these are the shifting rules of interaction, process, and motivation. These are facilitated through changes of awareness, which often occurs during the therapy session and which are transformed into action outside of the therapy office. Reeducation, which is in throughout this phase, no intervention is more important than encouragement. The encouragement process. Now, this process is central to all phases of counseling and therapy. So basically, this is the point of this Adlerian therapy. Therapist helps clients focus on their resources and strengths to have faith that they can make life changes even though life can be difficult. This is a key to promoting and activating social interest. The use of variety of relational, cognitive, behavioral, emotional, and experiential techniques to help clients identify and challenge self-defeating cognitions, generate perceptual alternatives, and make use of assets, strengths, and resources. Also, Adlerians believe that discouragement is a basic condition that prevents people from functioning, and they see encouragement as the antidote. Adlerians also use and interpret encouragement as a process of increasing the courage needed for a person to face difficulties in life. Now, courage, this is developed when people become aware of their strengths, when they feel they belong and are not alone, and when they have a sense of hope and can see new possibilities for themselves and their daily living. Now, encouragement takes many forms depending on the phase of the counseling process. So, in the relationship phase, encouragement results from the mutual respect the counselor seeks to engender. And in the assessment phase, which is partially designed to eliminate personal strengths, clients are encouraged to recognize that they are in charge of their own lives and can make different choices based on their new understandings. Now, during reorientation, encouragement comes when new possibilities are generated and when clients are acknowledged and affirmed for taking positive steps to change their lives for the better. Encouragement literally means to build courage, change, and the search for new possibilities. In this, clients make decisions and modify their goals. Commitment is an essential part of reorientation because if the client is not committed into changing in his or her perspective, there can be no to little effect of this therapy. Clients translate their new insights into concrete action. That's why this phase is called action-oriented phase. This action-oriented phase is a time for solving problems and making decisions. Making decisions. Adlerian therapy seeks to make a difference in the lives of their client. That difference may be manifested a change in behavior, attitude, or perception. Adlerians use many techniques to promote change. Techniques that goes by the names of immediacy, advice, humor, silence, and many more. Contemporary Adlerians practitioner can creatively employ wide range of techniques as long as these methods are philosophically consistent with the basic theoretical premises of Adlerian psychology. One example of a technique that can be used in this therapy is the push-button technique. This push-button technique can be seen in the video that we uploaded in the Adlerian therapy. The push-button technique, the goal of this is to help clients to become aware of their role in contributing to their unpleasant feelings. Typically, clients are asked to recreate an unpleasant memory, which is then followed by recalling a pleasant memory. Recognizes that control is a major theme in depression, and this intervention is designed to help the client regain a sense of control over the negative feelings that seem overwhelming. An effective way of using this technique may be to give the client, especially a child or an adolescent, an actual push button to carry in his or her pocket as a physical reminder. Now let's talk about the areas of application of Adlerian therapy. Adler's pioneering efforts on prevention services in mental health led him to increasingly advocate for the role of individual psychology in school and in families. Application to family counseling. Adlerians working with families focus on the family atmosphere, the family constellation, and the interactive goals of each member. Now, family atmosphere, this refers to the climate characterizing the relationship between the parents and their attitudes toward life, gender roles, decision-making, competition, cooperation, dealing with conflict, responsibility, and so forth. Now, this atmosphere, including the role models the parents provide, influences the child as they grow up. Also, this seeks to increase awareness of the interaction of the individuals within the family system. Those who practice Adlerian family therapy strive to understand the goals, beliefs, and behaviors of each family member and the family as an entity in its own right.
So another area to apply this Adlerian therapy is in group counseling. So this group counseling is very helpful in promoting social interest. This is because there is a mutual sharing that happens between each members that is involved in the counseling. And through this mutual sharing, it also develops a sense of connection with one another. And through this connection that they develop, it also leads to have a process of helping one another, which is also known as the role of altruism. So this group counseling applying the Adlerian therapy is addressed by Stonestegard, Bitter, Pelonis Peneros, and Nicole can also be an approach or brief approach to treatment to different persons. So that's all about the discussion regarding the Adlerian therapy.